am Karl Franz, and I was born into this world, just like you. A world of unceasing war and endless terrors, but with a nation of men at its heart, a bastion of hope and courage. The Empire. Led by the craven, torn apart by the greedy, weakened and exposed, forever on the defense. But no longer.
Man, I can't believe it's been 10 years since we first saw Karl's trailer. The Empire, the courage of mere mortal men against the horrors of the world. Faith, steel, and gunpowder, folks, that's what it's all about. Anyway, RuinusInsight here, welcoming you to part 1 of a brand new modded Total Warhammer 3 Old World campaign. SFO Grimhammer 3 Empire, and I don't think anyone doubted that Karl would win the community vote. I'm very excited to return to the faction that is the heart of the Warhammer fantasy setting, so I'll keep the housekeeping brief. First, this is an old world campaign, but if you prefer Karl in Immortal Empires, I have done his campaign before, so feel free to check that out. Mod-wise, there's a bunch, and all mod info is in the description below. As usual, plug-wise, check out our Discord and join the Ruinous host. Consider joining the channel or becoming a Patreon to get access to perks like exclusive votes, or support the channel by purchasing games, like the DLC, through our affiliates in the description below. Big shout out to the modders, and as always, the biggest shout out to you guys for your comments and support. Anyway, let's take a quick look at the faction and see how SFO changes it. So, Karl has access to the Elector count system, which essentially allows you to set lords to govern imperial provinces and provides bonuses, adds a ton of new state troops to the roster, which is pretty darn nice. Karl's faction is also immune to trespass penalties in Empire region for all his armies, while his own army gets to replenish in neutral territory. Befitting his status as a statesman and unifier, Karl's faction gets a bonus 10% character XP per allied faction, which is huge and should eventually stack to an insane amount of additional XP. And of course, only the best have the honor to serve the Emperor, so all his lords start with 5 free ranks. Karl himself is geared towards using state troops in his army, 20% reduction in cost and up to 45% increase at rank 9 veterancy in weapon and missile strength. I think this is really neat. Considering the size of the state troop roster, it basically means that we can do whatever we want with Karl's own army, and I'm gonna really enjoy that. Anyway, game settings, as usual, we're going with very hard, as I find that to be the sweet spot, and the AI stats modifier dialed up all the way to the max. And that's about it for me. In Sigmar's name, all glory to the algorithm, and let's get to it.
Now is the time, men of the Empire, to unite!
Alrighty, here we are, though. I would imagine this being old world, it's going to take a fair bit of time to get the men of the Empire to unite. They are pretty widely dispersed. Anyway, here we go. Karl Franz on field at last. On field again, I should say at last. This is one of the few campaigns that we're doing a second run of. Now, briefly how they play, especially in SFO. Obviously, we have the Elector count system for the Empire, which provides us a bunch of bonuses and, most importantly, unlocks additional units. It's really nice because it's a lot of extra units that are added to the roster, which means a lot more fun army compositions that you can do and just mess around with, generally speaking. And then, of course, we have the Electoral Machinations, which are sort of like the High Elf system, where you spend prestige, which you get from loyalty from the other Imperial factions, on various things. things. We'll play around with this, obviously, but we can get army completing units, for example, quickly. We can replenish Empire. This is the one we're probably going to use the most by far. Replenish troops, etc., etc., etc. Aid your friends. There's a bunch of stuff in here. And then, of course, the standard sort of improve or decrease relations between various imperial things. Karl Franz is known for being sort of the greatest statesman, after all, so it makes sense for him to have that. Anyway, looks... Oh, this is interesting. Huh, I didn't know this. So it looks like we don't start with all of Altdorf here, eh? I wonder if we get like a confederation thing for these guys, I imagine. Well, it'll probably be an event or something along those lines. Anyway, we're going to start out by uncollecting the income and then going for the fields. We need the South Bank and Altdorf itself to grow as fast and as mighty as we can. And an SFO, for those not familiar, not collecting the income increases the growth in the settlement by 50, which when you have basically no growth whatsoever is a good thing. Anyway, we'll do text afterwards. I'm too excited to jump into our first fight, especially since we have a unit of Imperial Foot. Much needed heavy infantry with shields, as obviously swordsmen won't cut it in a late game. Though, we'll see. Anyway.
No peace.
First little fight, what do we have? They have great swords and a mortar. We have a mortar. They have Empire Knights and we have Reikland. Kind of similar armies, to be perfectly honest, which is a good thing because they should give us a nice fight. First fight, cinematic, go. For Heldenhammer indeed, Karl. For Heldenhammer indeed. Here we go. Ah, mere mortal men return at last to the channel. It's always fun playing the Empire, isn't it? And you gotta admit, the Imperial Foot do look damn good. And Empire aesthetics are generally pretty fantastic, all told. Can't wait to see all the knightly orders. They're all looking pretty good. And then there's Karl, who, for whatever reason, does not have a horse. And I know that he'll level up relatively quickly, and he'll get a mount probably at level like 5 or something, but he's the damn emperor. Give him a horse. He can start with one. It's not Deathclaw. It's not going to make that much of a difference. Though, admittedly, he'll probably be a little bit more tanky on foot than he is on a horse, since he'll be a smaller model. Anyway, fairly interesting little matchup here we've got, other than the fact that it's a relatively even matchup in terms of our armies. For our first battle, we start on a hill, and thus our army is hidden from the enemy, and thus they couldn't immediately fire upon us with their mortars, and they start in a forest, and we couldn't immediately fire on them, with the exception of the one unit that revealed itself, which was in the trees, so didn't help all that much. Anyway, the elevation advantage from the hill is one that we will make good use of, hopefully. The enemy Empire Knights, a rather weak unit, though of course a lot better in SFO, start heading towards us, and admittedly the Empire Knights are very solid in the early game. Super heavily armored after all at 100. Even if their stats leave something to be desired. Anyway, we gun at least a few of them down with our handgunners, then charge on in with our Imperial Foot, who should make reasonably quick work of them. Speaking of making quick work of things, our Reiksguard have moved all around, and rather than engage in combat with the enemy knights, have left that to the handgunners and the foot Reiksguard, as these guys are needed to tie up the enemy handgunners and the enemy mortar. Pretty much, I'd say, I don't know, 70% of the damage capabilities of the entire enemy army are tied up in those 3 range units, and then the rest coming in from the enemy greatswords here, who are currently surrounding our Imperial Foot with the help of some spears. Fortunately, Karl is right there to lead them. I always found it a little bit odd that they didn't bother switching the animation, or switching the sort of models for the weapons. Like, Karl clearly has Galmaraz here already. And just give him a 2-handed rune fang and then switch it up if he actually unlocks it. But all good. As far as feature creep goes, there's a lot more critical things. Anyway, This is the center of our line, and Karl and the Imperial Foot should be able to hold it fairly well, especially with the support that we're currently getting from the handguns, who are currently firing away at those greatswords. Funnily enough, since Imperial Foot, Reiksguard, and greatswords roughly share all their stats, or at least they're extremely similar to each other, I would imagine that the armor piercing of the greatswords would allow them to beat Imperial Foot in a direct one-on-one contest, so I definitely have to be careful. Over on the left flank, we got a unit of halberdiers and another unit of swordsmen facing off against enemy shielded spears. Certainly we'll want to get a few pikemen and then upgrade them to our own shielded spears relatively soon, and then eventually into halberdiers. Don't get me wrong, I like the shielded spears, but the halberd is such a mainstay of Imperial armies, and in terms of, you know, all the art of the Empire, you're just constantly seeing halberdiers, so gotta use them a lot. And you do have to be careful with them, because they're still a regular Imperial state troop. While they do have armor piercing, they're still only at 45 armor and unshielded, and so vulnerable to pretty much everything. So you do have to be careful with those halberds. Anyway, it looks like Karl has found the enemy lord, and while the Imperial Foot have overrun the great swords, and the Reiksguard have pretty much obliterated the... Oh, wow, that guy... He got up from that, damn. You guys see that guy flying? He did like, I don't know, he did a bunch of spins in the air. That was amazing. I was not expecting that. Top-notch ragdoll physics, I guess. And man, Karl, he says bring him to his men, but he certainly sends a lot of his men flying every which way with every blow from Galmaraz. Anyway, with that, the enemy lord will shatter. The Reiksguard have completely destroyed most of the enemy range units, with a little bit of help from one of the little swordsman units, and Karl will defeat the final blow, taking the head off of the, I guess, lead secessionist here. A lovely work. Alright, there we go. Lovely little first fight to get us started. The Imperial Foot obviously took the brunt of the damage from the enemy, having to contend with the enemy greatswords and Empire Knights and whatever other unit they were fighting, but that's hardly surprising, and it freed up our Reiksguard, our non-foot Reiksguard, to basically obliterate the enemy backlines, while our handgunners over time took care of the Empire Knights. Went well. We could heal up, but I don't imagine that we really need to, at least I hope not. Let's pardon the captives. A little bit of extra money in the early game is always a very nice thing. Let's do that. Alrighty, and alright, the army does get destroyed, and now the question is, free ambush success chance, that'll be interesting. Though I doubt that we'll be able to ambush Mr. Kazarak. Now, we have hold the line. What's our first point gonna be? We do need the movement, but luckily for us, Tom is fairly close, and frankly, the first territory of the Empire Secessionists, who somehow have more territory than Reikland itself, are relatively close together, though it probably won't matter that much. You know, let's start with Inspiring Presence. We may want to evolve some of these guys via Warband to halberdiers or whatnot as soon as we can. But anyway, frankly, it probably won't matter much either way, because we'll out-tech it rather fast. Anyway, you're gonna head to Tom. Like so, and I guess this is probably the last campaign that we'll ever have on this channel that will have the butt ladders, as they're removing those. But we can still put them to use here. Anyway, we're going to attack this in a second, but let's deal with the admin first before we do. Grain silos is the obvious pick here. Casualty or punishment rate plus 5% alone is worth it, and then it leads to continuous production, which gives us construction costs minus 20%. Basically, the two best parts of the Imperial tech tree are basically right in the beginning. So those are definitely the ones that are the most critical, and they're the ones that we're going to take. We have a little bit of movement here. Just want to double check what we want to go into after this. Ports are nice, depending on how many ports we have. Obviously, the armor for the basic infantry, and just generally +4/+4 for all infantry, are going to be quite useful in the early game. I do like the additional range and accuracy for the missile troops, but you have to go through a lot of stuff to get there. On the other hand, this does just buff missile troops with every single tech. And admittedly, Empire are fairly reliant on them, though we'll have plenty of different types of troops to go around. Also, let's see. So South Bank, well, I guess you don't need to build, so I guess we're just going to go straight into the next fight. All right, well, fair enough.
To arms, men!
Alrighty, here we go, our first siege. Bit of a shame that it has to be a siege of an imperial city, but, well, we gotta take it back from those secessionists. Anyway, I'm gonna have to start the mortar up and try to do a little bit of damage to those enemy walls, but it looks like the damage on the mortar, is way too slight to rely on it to bring it down, in that the damage is so low that we'd run out of ammunition on the mortar long before the wall would come down. And so, we're going to do the other thing, which is start working our way through that gate. Karl will join his Reiksguard and the Imperial Foot as well, while we do a little bit of area denial with the mortar, i.e. fire upon the enemy crossbows and such, so that they hopefully can't fire upon us on the approach. And just generally speaking, they're going to be the most annoying unit to deal with in this relatively weak garrison, so they gotta be brought down. I'm just gonna keep it at max speed until the gate goes down, however. Well, we're nearly there. 1/3. For those wondering, also, I did consider using the Mixu's Legendary Lords, or whatever, the additional Lords mod. I did use it in Warhammer 2 previously, but anyway. It's a fun mod and all that, but we have a sort of... well, let's say... Hey, come on, guys. Okay, I'm just surprised that they're not moving yet. But, oh, right, the Knights are trying to back off, and the Imperial Foot are trying to move into the settlement, which meant that they all got delayed for a few seconds. I got a little bit worried because it's a siege, and sieges can have desyncs sometimes, but it's a low-level siege, and thus, well, it shouldn't be an issue here. Anyway, we made our way into the enemy settlement, and have started... the duel between these two. And what was I talking about? Oh, right, the Mixu's mod. I decided against it simply because we have kind of a narrative thing going on with the campaigns on this channel, and we don't really need an extra, like, I don't know, 12 overpowered, or not even overpowered necessarily, but 12 powerful but already named legendary lords, because we gotta give our own lords and heroes, and possibly even, on the rare occasion, units, their chances to make their own stories and join the community canon. If we have like a dozen Elector counts that are all already named, nobody would get the chance. I just figured it was kind of unneeded. Maybe in another campaign, we shall see. For now, though, we've got to give Karl a proper chance. And speaking of Karl and the way that we do this campaign, I'd like to see how well we can do without taking an insane amount of territory in the early game, but we'll see. The Empire does have a pretty bad tendency to get overrun completely by all the forces against it, at the very least with the way that the AI plays the Empire, and the fact that the AI can't really manage the public order of the Empire probably causes a lot of problems for it as well. It would be nice to allow Karl to play as a statesman and actually, you know, get some advantage of his ability to travel through Imperial territories without incurring the wrath of the AI factions from trespassing, since he's immune to that. But it all, of course, depends on how quickly, well, he gets wrecked. So we're going to have to wait and see. Or not he gets wrecked, everybody else gets wrecked, I guess. Alrighty, but anyway, watching some good old-fashioned knights obliterating regular state troops with a little bit of help from Karl in the center of the formation, though we do have to be a little bit, at least, more careful with him. Our Reiksguard have made their way into the settlement and have run down one of the enemy units of crossbows, while our two of our other melee troops, i.e. The unit of halberdiers and a unit of swordsmen, are attempting to break through the gate, though it does look like the enemy plugged this breach, which is, I suppose, to their credit. What they can't plug is the fact that we can still climb the walls for one more campaign before this ability is removed, so since it's part of the gameplay, we're going to put it to use. I think we would have been able to, even if we didn't use the ability to climb the walls with the ladders, we would have been able to take this without too much trouble, especially since the enemy is blobbed up and the mortar is now dropping shells just outside the gate, and especially considering that the mortar shells shouldn't be a major threat to the Imperial foot, as they're super heavily armored, or maybe not super heavily armored, but certainly heavily armored, and won't take nearly as much damage from the mortar splash damage compared to the regular state troops. In the meantime, the enemy does not leave enough of its units of melee to guard all those crossbows, and thus the Reiksguard will work on running them down. Unfortunately, we can't get too much in the way of effective charge bonus within the settlement like this, as we don't have a lot of maneuvering capabilities for the Reiksguard, especially as enemy melee troops, and there at least one will move in to help the crossbows out. But that's alright, as Karl and his Imperial foot continue to obliterate, slowly but surely grind down the secessionist troops, and the mortar shells continue shrieking overhead. Tactically, there isn't too much to say anymore about this battle. It's just a matter of grinding down the foes that are clustered around the gate and doing as much work with our Reiksguard over in the back as possible. We don't want them, since they're shock cavalry, to remain in combat, so we're going to do a little bit of a tactical retreat or back off a bit and cycle charge as much as we can. Our handgunners have made their way on top of the wall. Sorry about the poor camera work, but the wall kind of interferes. Anyway, they made their way up on top of the walls and going to start taking pot shots at whatever units they can. Of course, most of the Imperial State troops, with the exception of halberdiers, are, well, I guess, and pikemen, are shielded. And it is a silver shield? No, it's a bronze shield. No, it is a silver shield, but it goes down to a bronze shield because of the shield breaker on him, isn't it? And with the handgunners supporting everybody, with the mortar, I believe, having run out of ammunition at this point, but having done good work, we are nearly through. There we go. We've got reinforcements starting to make their way through the gate now, as the enemy no longer has enough of a mass of units to hold us off. Karl and his Imperial foot will send the last of the pikemen running, one last charge from the Reiksguard, and with that, the battle is ours, and we take the settlement without too much problem at that. Worked pretty darn nicely, and it's always nice to see the Reiksguard do work. Though, of course, we're going to be getting plenty more work out of them in actual field battles where they can maneuver and play to their strengths. Alright, there we go. Unsurprisingly, some very solid work out of our elite units. Well, elite, but yeah, 40,000 damage out of that one mortar. Imperial mortars in the early game. Very solid artillery pieces. The 20,000 damage out of the Reiksguard, which were such a massive irritant to the enemy army once they had made their way inside the enemy gate. And of course, Karl and his personal Imperial foot unit that he started with were able to hold back the vast majority of the enemy that were clustered around the gate, trying to prevent us from making good use of that breach. Now, it is interesting to see that the mortar does not have enough ammunition or damage to bring a wall down. We'll definitely need to bring a cannon for that sort of thing, should we want one in Karl's army. But I think Karl, for once, and I rarely do this, but I think Karl might actually be a very good candidate for a generalist army, because he buffs all the Elector count troops and we can just do whatever we want with his army, which is a great thing, rather than going full on specific, great swords and Reiksguard plus the Imperial foot spam. But anyway, a nice fight is what I'm getting at. Occupy the place. Lovely. And we got a first territory. We will uncollect the income similarly here. We cannot yet build a control building, which we will need everywhere, and I would like to get Free Company Militia up and running immediately. However, it's probably better to build it at Castle Grauenberg, or... Oh, Bogenhofen is at in a different settlement, huh? Interesting. All right, fine. I think we can, wait, we can build basic spears. Yes, yes, we can. All right, so we'll build a couple of basic spears, not archers, because you're just so bad. And, and Karl, you've leveled up as well, sir. This time, just in case we're going to get your root marcher, I'm hopeful that you can immediately reach Grauenberg or Bogenhofen. And I guess we'll use Grauenberg to build our military structure here, rather than the main settlement. Frankly, it doesn't matter over much, but obviously we'd have to delete whatever from here anyway, so temporary growth and then switch it up later. Alright, next up, let's take a look at Diplo. Let's see what we got here. Karlberg. You want to immediately trade? Sullen does as well. Middenland. You know what, maybe we'll trade with Middenland. They're fairly big to start. We start with one. They start with like what? Like 12 territories or something like that. Although, funnily enough, every single time that I have played the old world map, the Empire always gets absolutely obliterated by stuff, so it's, well, it's going to be interesting to see whether they do so here. Military access, let's do Court of the Night. Yes, you'll do that. No trade agreement, but that's alright. You just got to get friendly with all the other Imperial factions.
Who calls?
Karlberg isn't at war with anybody. We could give them 700 money for this, but frankly, doing the alliances with all the other Imperial factions will probably do this for us anyway, so we can, by and large, ignore it. And here we have the Knights Panther Chapter House. Missile block chest plus 15% for Empire Knight action-wide. Oh, that's really nice. Huh. Alright, we gotta get that early. Well, if we can, get these guys to join up. Weapon strength for units with great swords, armor for Wolfkin and great swords. Oh, it's got some good stuff at Karlberg. It's a solid, well, a couple of landmarks. And they're tier 2 and 3, which means we can get them early. Yeah, alright, anyway. I think that's all we can do right now. So we're gonna end the turn. For those unfamiliar with the way I do things on Old World, yes, Old World takes like 1 billion years for each turn to go, but, well, I edit that out, so... Alright, so it is a mission to confederate with Altdorf. Should be easy once we take Schilderheim, though that would mean declaring war on the Clusterite tribe. I guess they're beside us, and the game is kind of, you know, sort of pushing us towards doing that sort of thing. With the Emperor away and turmoil brewing in the south, it falls upon the High Lord's steward to maintain an air of normalcy in Altdorf, deterring any opportunistic moves from the Skaven, or worse yet, the Middenlanders. Once Karl Franz returns and the southern crisis subsides, Archduke von Bogenberg will eagerly claim a well-deserved holiday in the countryside. You know, why does that sound menacing to me? It's like the farm that you send your the dog gets sent to. Farewell, Archduke von Bogenberg. You can play in the fields. Your well-deserved holiday in the countryside. But anyway, I don't think it's actually that's what it's saying, but I do find it amusing. Bogenhofen and Castle Grauenberg are equally well or poorly defended, so it doesn't really matter which we take. But I guess it's part of the same province, so we'll go for Grauenberg first, and then where is Schilderheim? Wait a moment. Oh, it's all the way out here. Oh, so we're better off taking Bogenhofen, then moving to Grauenberg, and then on to Schilderheim that way. Alright, fine, Bogenhofen it is. I hear those shadows over it. Alright, and this one obviously will auto-resolve. Alrighty, because that would have been a waste of time otherwise. Occupy. And recruitment cost reduction for our infantry units. Free Dragonfire handgun. That'll be useful for our inevitable fire army, or armies. You can collect the income for now. And you can actually keep the weaving house, I think. We'll still need money generation here. And otherwise, there isn't much to do. We can take a look at our secondary lords, however, and get one on the field if there's a decent one for upgrading. You have a similar upkeep reduction for Elector Count state troops, which is great, but we probably won't be able to get too much use out of it until, you know, mid-game, I would say, but anyway. Casualty punishment trait early, not bad. Enemy or attribute immune to contact effects. Combatant, word save when defending. No, thank you. Okay, I'm not even gonna look at the Huntsman. Well, you know what, let's take a look at them, but... Oh, Huntsman General, why are you so terrible? Arrange for Huntsmen and Archers. Yeah, so we'll probably want to get at least one of these guys being used, maybe... If only this applied to crossbows as well, it would be a lot better. But anyway, Sharpshooter... Alright, let's take a look at Master Engineers. So we got Ingenious, which is kind of meh. Range for gunnery, infantry, and gunnery cavalry units, plus hawkish precision. That sounds like a winner to me. Ooh, dwarfen plate armor. Pretty sure it should be dwarfen with an F, but anyway. Armor plus 10 for all units. This will come in handy. Huh. This might know what we should use that for, as in that type of lord. If we are able to build the Wolfkin, Swords of Ulrich, and yes, we're able to build the Wolfkin, which have no armor. We can use one of those guys as a commander of the Knights of the White Wolf, and then the Wolfkin and presumably Swords of Ulrich as the infantry of that particular army, as both of those will need the armor. Alright, everything's coming together. But I'm still going to say the Master Engineer because this is universally useful. Both hawkish precision and range. So you Dolph, Hurt, Wiggins, and... Oh, we unlocked the Zinter's Reichsguard, which I assume don't serve for free. They're very expensive, but it's alright. Karl's signature unit and all that. It's because we need to the level 4, and we start with this guy at level 5. Now, you need to be rank 20 for that steam tank, so we may as well start leveling it towards it. You can have Hold the Line and Route Marcher nonetheless, and we don't know exactly what we're going to have with you, but for now you'll most likely act as a supporting army, and thus Pistol Corps is probably still a great choice, as you can have war wagons and pistoliers and whatnot to help Karl out. So let's go for Pistol Corps. Too bad Logistician is a little bit too far away, but it's all good. Karl, you can build a couple more pikes, and I assume we can evolve these two halberdiers. We'll have to first give them shields to evolve them to spears, and then evolve them to halberdiers, which is fine, and I like it that way. Maybe in this campaign we'll do a thing where we have to start with swords in order to become great swords, and have to start with pikes in order to become shielded spears in order to become halberdiers. You gotta work your way up through the ranks and all that. Anyway, end turn. Alright, SFO starts. You can get a bonus to your early game, but lately I've been doing no bonus at all, so we're just going to go straight to time and balance and not bother with it. Tom, you are able to be upgraded. 2,000 gold we can afford, and it looks like Altdorf is ready for its first upgrade as well. You have to be tier 3. Alright, fine. Fair enough. Alrighty, now, yeah, it's going to take a little bit of effort to get a full province underway, but that's alright. Well, actually, no, you know what? Dolph, you hit Castle Grauenberg. Doesn't look like much of a castle as yet, but that may change in a few seconds. Karl, I would like you to leave the settlement and go into encamp stance to increase your constant casualty or punishment rate. Go towards Castle Grauenberg and reinforce Dolph, who will then attack it. With an auto-resolve. I should have popped Zintler's Reichsguard over there, but I forgot because I'm an idiot. Occupy. Militiaman, yeah, that's fine. Obsidian Lodestone for Karl, you can hold on to that. And hey, Karl's got a horsey now, good for him. Then, the reason I wanted to do that was to push Karl as far as we can through this territory to move towards Schilderheim, as I think in one turn we wouldn't have been able to reach it, but in two, that may no longer be the case. You're gonna get Hold the Line. And we'll grab the Zinter's Reichsguard, assuming I don't forget again, next turn as soon as we attack. Everything else is good. I do want to see what stances SFO gives us. Missile strength, missile resistance, and ammunition. Trenches, eh? Right, interesting. And channeling, I think... some factions don't have a channeling stance, and it is... it's unfortunate when you don't. Anyway, that looks like an easy end turn to me, and nothing to upgrade unless I'm mistaken. And we're on the way to Schilderheim. And I believe the Empire Secessionists would have been destroyed, yes? Or no? Well, whatever. You're recruited Battle Wizard at Bogenhofen, and it is a Gold Wizard. Well, You have Serene. You get the Fear of Aramar, which is... which is... it's okay. I would honestly have preferred a different wizard type. The nice thing about the Gold Wizards is that they have the Armor Aura, so they can hover over the melee line and provide them additional armor. It ain't bad. I do wish that he had a better trait, but nonetheless, we needed a wizard. Unfortunately, same said wizard will not be able to reach Schilderheim with us, and I think we got to get a move on and, you know, strike while the iron's hot, or whatever the phrase is. You can grab those Zintler's Reiksguard to get 2 Reiksguard. We will see who you're at war with. You're at war with nobody. Well, you're about to be at war with somebody. The somebody. Karl. Yo. It may not be Blackfire Pass, but perhaps we can, you know, practice for it. Alright, and circle the place, and Electoral Machinations. Let's see what we got here. So, spawn a degrading army for target Empire faction, target faction fealty, can't be used in your own regions. Grants 1 population surplus to target region's province. Does this include ours? It does. Okay, that's nice. Grant Army Lord 2.5k XP for only 500. That seems like a steal in the early game, and I think that's probably what we'll want to do. I do like the recruitment cost reduction, but it's not super needed right now, and we can't really afford it anyway. Let's do commendation for Karl himself. He's going to give himself a commendation and get a little bit of XP, and we'll ignore that. Huh, I didn't level him up. Came close to... Huh. Wait, how much did it say? Was it 1.5k or 2.5k? 2.5k experience. How can he have 2,465 experience if he gained 2.5k? Somebody explain this to me, because he didn't level just now. This makes no sense. Well, not that it matters, but it is amusing. Anyway, you can go here to reinforce this, Mr. Dolph. I can get you in there. Selena Giggle. And Mr. Ulrich Meyer. You can move this way as well. Get ready to move on in. Alright, how's everything else looking here? Tom, South Bank, everything's fine for now. I guess we can immediately upgrade Bogenhafen. I'll let the places keep growing, though. Rather than collecting the income, it's not needed right now. And, oh! I didn't even see the Ubersreich. Whoops, I had assumed that we were supposed to go this way. Well, that's a minor error on my part. I guess we'll knock out Schilderheim quickly and then bounce back towards Ubersreich. Go figure. And then Grunberg is owned by Skaven, and Dukelberg is as well, huh? Alright, interesting. Let's take a look at our Imperial allies here. I want to see if anybody's starting to lose territory quickly. I take it that was a Middenheim territory lost, eh? You know, Middenheim is kind of in the center of the iffy situation. Maybe we're hurt of the One Eye. Maybe we'll help them out by using Send Aid on them in a couple of turns once we have the sufficient amount of prestige or whatever that currency is. Anyway, you're not able to get... Yeah, okay, anyway, fine. Let's do this. You in? Let's do this. Time to try out our Zintler's Reiksguard.
Men of the Empire! For Sigmar! For the Empire! For the Warhammer!
Everything I do is for the Warhammer, my friend. Anyway, here we go. Ooh, looks like we're going to take a Vindictive Glare on... Oh, bad move from the Shaman. Looks like he fired the Vindictive Glare at one of our units of swordsmen, but it was specifically a unit behind this little copse of trees, which took the magical hits for them. Oh, lovely. That worked out well for him. Anyway, we've got a nice little Orky army against us. Fortunately, not just fighting like on like, i.e. those Empire Secessionists, and moving on to at least fighting some orcs here. And I do imagine this will be a pretty good fight. We've got a decent position, but the enemy does outnumber us a fair bit, and you can't be underestimating those Forest Goblin Spider Riders. Yeah, they're basic tier 1 units, but they're a fairly frightening unit with that lethal poison of theirs and fairly solid weapon strength as well, so considering their numbers. Alrighty, well, the enemy is still booking their way towards us, and we're engaging in a little bit of a range shootout at the current time. Our mortars and our handgunners alike are firing upon the enemy, error boys. I'm just going to try to knock them out as much as possible, though luckily for us it looks like the Arrow Boys are specifically firing upon our Imperial Foot, and that's a unit they're unlikely to damage. The Reiksguard are in two different places. The Zintler's Reiksguard, their unique aspect is that they have Vanguard deployment, and I guess the fact that they're anti-large rather than infantry, but anyway, their Vanguard deployment allowed them to deploy behind the enemy army. We're going to send them in to run down those enemy range units, while the other unit of Reiksguard was deployed far behind our enemy army, behind the statue of Moor, in order to charge into the flanks of the enemy Boar Boys. And after they're done with the Boar Boys, hopefully the Spider Riders as well, who are currently trying to deal with our pikes. Fortunately, our pikes were kept behind, together with the Halberdiers, our army, where the ranged enemy units are focused on our shielded swordsmen and Imperial Foot. There's a little bit of rock, paper, scissorsing that's quite necessary so early in the game. Karl in a little bit of combat against the enemy Black Orc Big Boss here. And we've got a big concentration of enemy troops. Ooh, and the Wa just activates over on the right flank as well. Fairly a decent pile of Goblin Spears. Man, it's funny, in my Gorbad campaign, we managed to get the Goblin Spears, like the most basic rather, Goblin unit up to Gold Shield with 95 missile block chance, which is absolute insanity. Gotta love the combination of SFO abilities and traits plus the tactics from Gorbad. Makes for some tanky little gobos. And of course that would probably be better on the Forest Gobos, because they also have the poison to their name, but anyway, I digress. That's a different campaign. For now, the Orc Boys are still facing off against the Imperial Foot. I believe Karl has had to back off rather than continue his duel with the Black Orc Big Boss, as we needed him to help out over on the left flank. There he is. Although it looks like the Reiksguard have at this point wiped out the enemy Orc Boar Boys and have sent those Forest Goblin Spider Riders packing. Going to charge back on, and now they have lost a quarter of their number against the enemy Orc Boys and Gob Spears, and though unfortunately the enemy does activate yet another Wa army ability just as soon as we charge on in. And with Sneaky Stabbing, those are some high damaging weapon, 51 weapon strength, pretty solid, high damaging regular Orc Boys. Although that's nowhere near the height that you can take regular Orc Boys, as we once again learned from the Gorbad campaign. Anyway, Zintler's Reiksguard has been riding around in the background, riding down 123 enemy archers, but is now ready to join the fray in melee, as we need to help out, and they will ride to the aid of the other Reiksguard, pinned between Reiksguard Foot and Zintler's Reiksguard with that golden armor of theirs. We got gold, we've got an emperor, we've got glorious melee combat. What else could you want? And it looks like the handgunners have started the enemy Goblin Great Shaman routing, rather than trying to chase him around and taking a long time to kill that tiny little single entity with our units of Reiksguard. It was easier to just gun it down with those handgunners. Alrighty, there we go. Lovely to see the Reiksguard back in action, moving against those Spider Riders, which I'm sure have racked up a fair bit of damage, but not enough to give the win to the enemy. Karl took a fair bit of damage as well, but looks like he just manages to defeat the enemy Black Orc Big Boss at the end of the fight. Very, very nice. And I guess that barrier helped him out a little bit. Granted, he did go into the battle very damaged, but nonetheless, it worked out well. A lovely, lovely fight and fairly severe damage to a ton of our troops. Pyrrhic victory indeed. Alright, there we go. A Pyrrhic victory and a rather nice fight. Certainly a better showing from the Greenskins than the Empire Secessionists. Well, I mean, they did rebel against the Emperor, so, well, they're probably not the brightest around. And losing out to Orcs especially. Anyway. Pikes, impressive 213 kills on you and 16,000 damage, actually outdoing the Imperial Foot, though admittedly, once again, those guys have a tendency to hold ground, and they certainly achieved that. Objective, 18,000, nearly 19k and 229 kills on the Zintler's Reichsguard, and the regular ones took a fair bit of damage themselves, losing nearly half of their HP, fighting boar boys, spider riders, etc. Spider riders, definitely not to be underestimated. That lethal poison on them, even in the early game is, well, especially in the early game, is pretty darn difficult to deal with. Occupy. A lovely work. Barded Warhorse for Dolph Hertwigens, who can reinforce a little bit faster. Province secured Reikwald Forest, and there we go. We've got that Confederation. And Altdorf. Lovely. Alrighty, now, before we do anything else, first of all, Hostfestag is the one that we do, right? Oh, construction costs for all buildings. Okay, I guess we'll start with that. And then upgrade these things. That should be okay, I think. Now, the Confederation made us go bankrupt effectively by giving us Albert von Bogenberg, though... Adelbert, rather. We have the Wardens of the West, the Free Light Cav Mounted Yeomen, some Bretonnian mercenaries, I guess, and some decent stuff here, admittedly. So we will still put it to use. You have esteemed Boris Broch, which is pretty decent, so we might keep you. And you have Marksman Commander. Range for artillery, reload reduction for artillery. Okay, none of those are going to be useful to you. Oh, but you can move. Alright, so you know what? You're gonna go to Tom. We'll see if we can't use you to wipe out these guys at Ubersreich before we delete some of the stuff. You, I guess, can be reset, and then we'll maybe get you back. I mean, the thing is, we can get lords at rank 6 right now. We could just get another esteemed guy for pretty cheap. Which might be the better option in the early game. We should also keep an eye on these guys. Methodical, upkeep reduction for artillery and war machines, and casualty punishment rate for those. And I once again do like that dwarven plate armor. Yeah, you know what? Boris Broch, we're going to reset you, sir. Maybe I didn't have any items, because it's too late to check now. City North, you have the Firearms Academy. Ooh, Outriders. That's good. And obviously we also want to host Festag here. Actually, no, wait. We will upgrade you next turn, so we'll start with the Council of Burgomeisters. And the additional growth and the construction cost reduction, then switch to host Festag once we want to start collecting money. That makes more sense, I think. And then the same thing happening here. And then Bogenhofen, not until we get Eilhart, which hopefully we can now move directly towards if this army is helping here now. Karl, can you deal with Eilhart with what you currently have? There are still plenty of orcs running around. I'm willing to bet these guys will have at least one other full stack for us to play with. No, I think we're going to have to forego getting additional troops, at least for a bit. Anyway, at what rank do we want to start saving points? Okay, so this is the buffs for the Reichsguard and the Great Swords. Pretty necessary. Okay, so this is the armor for all Elector Count state troops, missile strength for them, decent heroic knightly band, upkeep reduction for knights of any kind, control and growth for local provinces, and then the Emperor's Journey, all of which are okay, but there's nothing sort of game-changing in any of those, so it's not that huge of a deal. I think we'll give you the card to hit at least for now, and then maybe we'll start saving points. Seems like the thing to do, although out of curiosity, does Emperor's Finest? It does not. I was wondering if it would buff the Great Swords, or I guess, wait, not on a steel. Huh. So speed, of course, which gives charge bonus and speed, is the thing that buffs Imperial Foot, which is kind of interesting because melee attack and melee defense would be much superior for a melee infantry unit, and I assume that they don't double dip into anything? Yeah, it looks like they don't. Well, actually, they kind of do because they're a Elector Count troop, and thus they will double dip into any Elector Count buffs that we get for them. I guess we'll see. Anyway, for now, I guess we're going to end the turn. Wait, no, I want to check the diplomacy. Oh, wow, what the heck? Oh! Oh, you gotta be kidding me. That Forced Confederation actually counts for the massive diplomatic relations reduction and control reduction with the Empire? That's unfortunate. I was not expecting that at all. Go figure. Alrighty, well, Marienburg will definitely want to trade with you, and I guess we'll do the military access and non-aggression pact. You give us money, we're going to need it, as we'll be losing public order. Ostland, I mean, we'll just be generally wanting to trade with all of the Empire factions as we can. Huh, Ostermark seems to be in trouble. Oh, they're fighting Draika. In fact, let's just take a quick look here. Stirland is also in trouble, they're fighting Malagor. Actually, they're not. They're fighting Feastmaster and the Deceivers, but they still appear to be in trouble. Having lost their main stack, eh? And we have that non-aggression pact that we started with Sylvania. Well, hope they don't die. We'll see. Alright, you give us money. We maybe shouldn't be taking their money right now, but it is what it is. Gotta do what you gotta do and all of that. And just get all the alliances we can with all of them. Or any that are willing to give us alliances. Stirland. I don't want the defensive alliance because I don't want to get drawn into any unnecessary wars right now, so we'll do that. And then Talabekland. No dice on the trade agreement, eh? How much? 5.5k? Are you insane? For 2.2, that's 5.5k already? I guess the devs haven't made any adjustments to the ridiculous nature of those costs. Oh well, let's do the military access. We're not going to declare war on Malagor, because we very well could, but there isn't a need right now. We'll deal with him later. Huh. Could get the defensive alliance for free should we need to, but anyway. The rest of that looks good, and we're not quite unbankrupt yet, but we're getting there. There we go. Obviously, our public order is falling everywhere, and there's not much we can do about it, because we're forced into a massive -40 control over the next few turns. Oh well. Building upgrades, and Grauenberg will wait, and then we'll host Festag after we build some stuff end turn. Alrighty, and so close to 1,000. I really wanted to provide aid, but let's see, Karl, you can immediately reach Eilhart, and the wizard can support you. I think we should take the opportunity to hit it, so also Slanish a giggle, but anyway, go to Eilhart, please. Ulrich Meyer, you're gonna pop into Eilhart as well. I should probably take Helmgard, and it's not going to let us auto-resolve that. Alright, well, I know that we can make it through regardless. You're gonna move into Reinforce, and Dolph, you are going to move into Reinforce as well. Like so. Alrighty, and we should build... I mean, everything, basically, but everywhere. East End, yes. And I guess next turn or so, we'll need to upgrade one of these to tier 3. No, it'll probably be more than a couple of turns. We are getting the additional growth out of Council Burgomeister, so maybe we take tank the public order reduction. Maybe. Alright, and there's nothing else to build with the limited territories that we have. What we do want to do, however, is Mr. Adalbert, you are going to proceed this way. Towards Ubersreich, which is going to be, defended already. And they do outnumber you a fair bit. What do you have here again? There's a giant pile of basic troops. I wish that the enemy didn't have a mortar, but I'm willing to bet that if we besiege them, we could still take it. Shouldn't be a problem. We get the Red Moon in, right? Yeah. Control +4 in the province is beneficial, though it's a terrible province because it's only 2 settlements, and it makes us become bordered with the Skaven right away, which is obviously a problem. Quick deal, rather. Court of the Night. Who are you again? Right. You're the guys fighting... How much money will you give us? 1,000 free gold. They will get wiped out inevitably eventually by Wissenland, and while the Wissenlanders won't like us piecing out with them, it's the free 1,000 gold, so I'm gonna take it. Clustereye Tribe. I guess we're going to keep on attacking you, even if you are willing to offer us nearly 2k. It is early territory. Though, funnily enough, it's early territory that'll continue taking Confederation hits. Anyway, fight for us. Go.
We hunt this day. Yet our quarry is neither boar nor deer, no. As Sigmar fought, so shall we. We will become part of the legend. By order of the Grand Theogenist, show no mercy!
Alrighty, here we go. Should be a relatively easy, small fight. I mean, frankly, I think this should probably have been auto-resolvable due to the fact that it is a relatively weak garrison. And I think, well, next time we find one of these similar ones, hopefully we'll just be able to auto-resolve it. And nonetheless, gotta fight it here, even with sieges being, let's say, considerably tougher in SFO than they are in vanilla due to the significantly increased health of walls and towers and gates and all that, and the damage on towers, nonetheless. Anyway, we're going to start the battle up by trying to knock out the enemy range units. There are 2 Night Goblin archers to the enemy army, and it's pretty much the main threat that the enemy has here. If we are to blob up around the gate, then the archers would have free reign to fire upon us, and this would be much more likely to actually dish out damage. In the meantime, though, we've also got the handgunners firing away at least at some of the orc boys, trying to hide behind those Imperial crenellations up here. Although, of course, the mortar shells can go over those, so that works out nicely for us. And we've got something we gotta do something while we wait for that gate to be broken down. Still about halfway through, so I'm gonna speed it up a little bit and continue the work from our handgunners and the mortar as well. Should really want to knock out that one Night Goblin Archer unit, which is, there we go. It's running, and it should be shattered, and there it goes. Beautiful. In the meantime, the gate is down to 5,000 HP, just a few more seconds, and we're able to break right through and start on the enemy army. And there we are. Here's Karl. Alright, this time we're gonna send the Imperial Foot in together at the same time with the Halberdiers. The units are damaged, but they can combine into one unit, such that neither unit is too badly damaged, and we can disperse the damage from the enemy, especially from the boar boys, while their charge is up. Karl's kind of sitting in the middle, maybe blocked by the rest of the units, but he'll get there eventually, I'm sure. Especially as the enemy continues to charge in and surround us. This is certainly as expected. The AI does like to get around Slaneshi Giggle, but no, to plug the gap of the gate. Oh, I do like how Galmaraz glows, though. This is going to be nice. The spotlight effect that we have on Karl due to Galmaraz glowing. Whenever we inevitably run into very dark maps, as in when we fight the vampires later on, and whoever else in the dark maps, we'll have Karl there to light the way. But in the meantime, it's tactically once again a very simple battle. Just got to... Ooh, lovely lighting from the mortars, but anyway, just got to grind our way through the enemy orcs around the gate in the same way that we did against the enemy secessionists in our Siege of Tom. And, of course, we do have the enemy blobbed up fairly nicely, and thus our mortars are able to continue firing on them. They don't have too much in the way of ammunition, but fortunately it shouldn't be all that needed here, especially as we do outnumber the enemy, which, when you're playing orcs, you really don't want. Although it does have a tendency to happen, simply because WA is such a disadvantageous army mechanic since it slows you down. Alrighty. Nearly there, I imagine. Bounce power's at about 90% in our favor. And gonna at least climb a few units up on top of the walls. The speed matters up. Since the enemy is choosing not to rout, though they should perhaps sense the fact that our Imperial Foot are barely damaged. And the pikes as well, and the halberds wherever they are, I don't know, but I'm sure they're fine as well, yeah. Without an enemy artillery, without enemy range, without a caster to take advantage of the fact that we're blobbed up with several units in one singular blob, the enemy can't punish us for it, and thus we can take advantage of dispersing the enemy damage. One of our handgunners, if I had parked them up on top of this hill, would have been able to fire over the heads of the troops here into the boar boys. It is a possibility. I think next time we end up fighting on this particular map, I'll give it a shot. Or the handgunners will give it a shot or two. But anyway, park them here. Possibly. I know that they can fire through the gate. I'm just wondering whether they can fire over the heads of these guys. At the Boar Boys, I'm reasonably sure that they can with elevation, because the Boar Boys are bigger entities. But I do wonder if Karl will be blocking them. Well, speaking of Karl, looks like the enemy Black Orc Big Boss waded his way through our troops into the center of our formation, and Karl's going to whack away at him with Galmaraz, but not actually Galmaraz, a few times. Hey, for all we know, this is just the replica Galmaraz that Karl uses. Until he gets the actual one. Alrighty, we've also made our way in with our Master Engineer. He's having a little bit of a difficult time firing over everybody, which is a bit of a shame, because these guys have that sort of grenade launcher attack to them. They can be pretty darn devastating in terms of damage, so... certainly a lord that we'll want to put to good use. I believe from our previous campaign we have Land Admiral Zintler, who was a community cannon lord, who will probably want to try to get back in here, but we'd need to give him an appropriate army, so probably not in the early game. Anyway, it looks like our knights have arrived because the enemy is running out of troops, and it looks like we didn't need any help from the units up on the walls, as the Reiksguard simply run down, breach the gate, and effectively give the battle to us. It looks like the Black Orc Big Boss is still in the fight, but not too much. Oh wow, it takes a big old volley from the handgunners up on top of the walls. And we're just waiting for the battle to end, as the only thing that remains is... oh, really? You guys aren't going to fire on the Black Orc Big Boss? Come on now. The only thing that remains is a single unit of Knight Gabo archers out here who, there we go, will shatter, and with that, the battle is ours. Alright, there we go. That should put us over the 1,000 needed prestige. Got a free other Trickster shard as well, which is a pretty darn massive hex. Wow, I remember the old version of this particular item. Compared to the new version, it's absolutely insane. Damn. Alright, well, Gold Wizard, you're going to have a very nice little item on you. Anyway, we will occupy the place for obvious reasons. Man, that one mortar is doing so much work for us. Karl, it's a great debuff, but I think we gotta give it to the wizard. Or we'll give it to the wizard once you lose it. For now, that's combining with the Obsidian Lodestone to give you a fair bit of barrier, and you're fighting a lot more than... huh. His barrier is 322. Should it not be 500 plus 300? How is it 322? What the heck, game?
Karl Franz. They will obey.
Is it based on his health? The barrier health will slowly replenish, yada yada yada, depleted before unit health, blah 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 blah. Proportional to unit remaining health. Ah, okay, yeah, it does make sense. Alright, never mind. Ignore me. It's been a while since I've had units with, use these items. Actually, it hasn't been a while. It's my first campaign with the new item changes. So, yeah, I just gotta get used to some of them. Anyway, let's see. Karl, you can hold on to your points for now, at least, I think. Wizard didn't even level up. Should have been casting more Searing Dooms, I think. You can keep upgrading Pistol Core. And we're definitely gonna make good use of it. Okay, yeah, still don't bother building anything. We can't afford it. What do we have here at Helmgart? Basically nothing. Should be a free territory if we can move on over there. You guys just sit there. We'll see if these guys do anything. Can you... I guess we could go into channeling. I don't see the need to not channel, I guess. You... yeah, we'll be upgrading you immediately, so let's go into Council Burgomeisters first, and you're in the same position. -10. Lord. Alrighty, that's... more than we'd like, but anyway, there are more buildings to be builded, so we gotta keep up with that Council of Burgomeisters for now. Maybe if we get Karl his quest, it'll be better. Anyway, unassigned skill points, building upgrade available, and that's another end turn. Alright, I was not expecting that. It looks like the Empire Secessionists will actually attempt to attack Adalbert von Bogenberg here, which is really good. I was expecting to fight them and their garrison, so we're definitely fighting. Go.
golden hammer! I left an offering to Shalia.
Alrighty, here we go. Looks like we've got our first non-Karl army, though we're probably not going to maintain it in this manner. We shall certainly put it to good use. Should be a fairly easy battle, I'd wager, though the enemy does have a fair amount of melee. We do have one of my favorite units, which is the Free Company Militia, which are going to come in very handy, either to fire at the enemy directly, or into the flanks, or to chase the enemy down. I love a good versatile unit like these guys, fragile though they may be. Then we have 2 units of Pistoliers, which are certainly going to come in handy. Light cav, especially in the early game, can be devastating if used well. And speaking of light cav, our first non-Imperial foot unit of the Elector Count State Troops, the Wardens of the West, Mounted Yeomen. I gotta double check how we actually get these guys. As in, I thought I saw some Bretonnian territories that we would have to take for ourselves, which may be the case. I'm gonna have to double check on it. Which, of course, we will have to if that's what the game wants, because we want all the availability of all the Elector Count state troops that we can get. Plus, it would be nice to make I guess, a Bretonnian exile army to help the Empire. If we should get a sufficient amount of troops from them, plus, of course, our Bretonnian allies, the ones who presumably don't attack, would give us the allegiance units. Or outpost units, what have you. Anyway, as I was saying, this should be a fairly easy battle, but it's the first episode. You gotta expect the first battles in the campaign to be relatively easy ones. Oh, that Orky battle, the first one, was pretty darn solid, and was a Pyrrhic victory after all, so... I always do like the sort of feel of the early game battles, as battles have a tendency to sort of ramp up as the enemies start getting bigger and bigger stacks, etc., etc. But anyway, this battle is going to start off with the Grand Master Hans von Horstmann trying to chase after our Pistoliers, which I assume is not going to go so well because he's significantly slower than them, and we're just going to keep firing away until he dies. He's already down to about 40% of his HP. In the meantime, the enemy's main stack is moving on in. We're going to countercharge them a little bit and downhill. The reason for this being that I wanted to get the Free Company and the crossbows in range to fire at the enemy crossbows. Certainly don't want them to be firing at our relatively fragile Free Company Militia, which admittedly they are already doing, and have done about 40% damage rather quickly to one of the units. But it's expected. Huh. I wonder if we can get any trait that increases block chance in the army. I know that orcs have one, and dwarfs have one. It would be nice if the Empire has a trait like that as well. Could certainly put that to good use. Anyway, this is one of the reasons it's nice to have the Free Company Militia. Move them like this, and then start firing into enemies' flanks and into the enemies' backs, and then, as needed, charge the enemy Empire Archers. And speaking of charging the Empire Archers, our Mounted Yeomen, Bretonnian Auxiliaries, are at work. And they've already forced one unit to rout, and while they haven't killed a lot of them, it's just a matter of time as we just force them to rout and then shatter, and then run down whatever we can. Though admittedly, we should do our best to actually try to run down as many of the enemy troops as possible, so that we don't have to fight them again. Anyway, our crossbows and the Mounted Yeomen together have cleared out most of the enemy range units, and especially since crossbows are significantly superior to the archers, which are still a terrible unit. We definitely have range superiority, and I guess cavalry superiority as well. On top of killing off the enemy lord, the Pistoliers have also forced 2 of the enemy Empire Archers to give chase to them, which means those 2 additional Empire Archers have thus far not really contributed to the battle at all. Minus the tiny little bit of damage that they probably would have done, tiny bit of damage that they would have done to the Pistoliers as they chased the Lord, or as the Lord chased them. Alright, pikemen facing off against pikemen, and a little bit of like-on-like. Always reminds me of playing Shogun, since it was a very very lean roster. Especially in the base game. And I guess spamming spears, pikes, or halberds is a little bit reminiscent to spamming Yari Ashigaru, so yeah. Anyway, the battle is going very much in our favor, 90% balance of power, and I think the enemy is just about ready to shatter. I'm surprised. Oh, right, yeah, they have shattered. It's just we got to get into proximity of the last 2 units of Empire Archers, and there we go. Actually, proximity wasn't even needed. And just a matter of riding/running them down like so. Let's watch one last charge from the Bretonnian auxiliaries and from our Pistoliers, which did so well in this particular battle. I think I saw that we had 2 types of state troops, including the... I think it was men-at-arms as well as these mounted yeomen, so we can certainly build a Bretonnian-themed army, which is definitely not something I got to do in previous Karl non-Old World campaigns, so I'm interested in that. Also, somebody suggested that we use the mod that brings up the bonus state troops HP and stat values up to the level of SFO, which I have done in this campaign, so not to worry, these are on an SFO level, rather than being super weak as in the, well, without the submods. Anyway, appreciate the suggestion. Yeah, alright, very nice, and particularly very nice to see when an AI isn't super cowardly and is willing to attack. Yeah, though I think this is one of those rare, extremely rare situations where the AI definitely shouldn't have attacked us. Way too reliant on Empire Archers, and they're just atrocious units. Anyway, our light cab came in very handy, killing off the enemy lord who achieved nothing. Our Wardens of the West mounted yeomen also did pretty darn well. Single unit of light cab, like having, you know, doggos for Norska or Chaos or Beastmen or Vampire counts, etc. Similar sort of situation. Very useful in the early game. Anyway, we also got plenty of damage on our Free Company militia, both from fighting and from chasing, as they're pretty good at that sort of thing. We can heal up, or we could take the money. And we do still have a garrison to fight, though, you know what, if we attack the garrison damage, the enemy might be willing to sally out and fight us in the field, which would possibly be the better option here. So let's not heal then, pardon the captives. Alright, at least we're getting through the Confederation debuff turns reasonably quickly. Technology research, casualty punishment rate much needed, and the same with the growth. An unusual location, well, isn't that lovely? Which one is it? And it's the Exquisite Vineyard. Yes, we will want the Dream Wine, so good. I guess I'll have to park somebody there, won't we? Alright, fine, fair enough. A village here, for obvious reasons. Still can't collect the income and probably won't be able to for a fair bit. South Bank. Probably will want to build some stuff. Now, we can't build any of our landmarks here yet. And these tier 3 buildings should go into minor settlements, not into major. We definitely need the control building, despite the fact that it's super expensive. So we're going to build that. We will want the toll gates / roads pretty much everywhere as well. But it's not necessary right now. Neither are the walls. I think maybe the first artillery building could be a good option right now, just because it'll give us the ability to... Armory gives us the +5 armor for all units recruited in the province. And just out of curiosity, can it be built in minor settlements? It can. Huh. Okay, well that's probably something that we'll want to do in City North, I guess. Although if we want to have all military structures available in Altdorf and all of the support structures, it might not be possible. The other option would be to build a wizard. We have one, but you can never have too many wizards. But the artillery building will give us war wagons, which we can't afford. You know what, let's hold off on it, to be perfectly honest, at least for a turn or so. We will want to upgrade Aelhart. Everything to tier 2 and 3 as fast as possible is going to have to take priority. So we'll do that. We can't build anything because we can't afford it, but that should change over the course of the next turn or so. Karl, keep holding on to your points. We will have you besiege Helmgart, which has barely a garrison, and it'll kill off one of our swords. Okay, I wonder. Kind of a waste of time, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, I know it's a fort, but it's a level 1 fort, and we've already seen how the AI handles how the AI handles sieges here. And who's this? Is Bretonia faction? Yes, Montfort. Alright, let's do that. Hey, there we go, don't kill him. Yeah, we'll get some damage, but let's face it, it's not worth our time. It'll be the same exact kind of fight that we've already had in besieging territories. A province secured Expite Pass. In my first Karl Franz campaign, I don't remember if it was Helmgart or whether it was Bergbray or Bergbris or one of the other forts. There should be at least one more somewhere around here. I don't remember which one it was, but I definitely remember a ton of battles in one of them. Upkeep production faction-wide, I guess we'll do State Troop Levy here. It's only 1%, it's not going to be much yet, but eventually it'll be good, and the rest of the stuff doesn't really help us here at all. I mean, I guess the construction cost reduction, but it's not like we're going to be super, you know, focused on upgrading Helmgard right now, at least not until there's more enemies running around here. Also, Ziflin, are we friends? We're trading. No non-aggression or anything like that, but that's fine. In fact, let's double-check Diplo again, though it unfortunately looks like there's nothing to do there. Alright, fine, fair enough. You two then sit here for a turn, and heal as best you can Karl, which is actually fairly decently. You, Searing Doom, need to get Gehenna's Golden Hand as fast as we can, and book it northward towards wiping out the Cluster Eye tribe, or whatever these guys are, fast as we can. There, Adalbert. You, still not sure whether we're keeping you around, but, well, I'm just like the Marksman Commander thing. Let's get you Inspiring Presence, and then let's have you besiege Ubersreich, the last territory which is starting to suffer some Skaven corruption. And you have no artillery, meaning you're going to have to build towers and such. Alright, fair enough. And that looks good. We won't go bankrupt this turn, but we will need to be careful, and then soon, most likely... 550, I just want to see what the amount of money we're generating here. 350 and 200. So we could do 550 out of Altdorf if we do host Festag. Ooh, no, it's still minus 15. No, we're just going to have to deal with it for the next few turns. What can you do? Alright, fine, fair enough. Select next tech. Supply wagons. No, we still have to go continuous production. Construction costs 20%. It's just so worth it. I don't think anything else will compare, with the possible exception of Imperial University, just because it gives us +2 control faction-wide, and I think that's probably going to be our next pick, but let's do continuous production first. Because it will allow us to produce public order buildings, like the tap room here, and the tap room literally everywhere. We may not be dwarfs, but, you know, the manlings do appreciate a good tap room, and assign skill points and turn. Oh, they're actually going to attack us, giving Adalbert another chance to fight. Well, I can't say no to that. A little bit more action from our light cab. Always, well, very fun to play. Alright, here we go, and it looks like we fight under corrupted Skaven skies, as there are a fairly decent amount of Skaven factions in the old world, a map around and in the Empire as well. But that does make sense, the Skaven are bloody everywhere. Everywhere in the world has a Skaven problem. Every major city has a Skaven undercity. The bigger the man-thing city, the bigger the Skaven undercity, typically. Not always, but oftentimes as well. I think it's Clan Skull, unless I'm mistaken, in Under Altdorf. Although it isn't represented in the game, I believe. Although I imagine Old World would probably have added Clan Skull. Just gotta check if they're around there. But don't quote me on it. I don't remember every single Undercity and every single Skaven faction that lives in that particular place. I do remember that the particular Skaven clan that occupies Under Altdorf is kind of the, let's say, Slaneshi Skaven. The, I don't know if degenerate is quite the right word, but, you know. Some Skaven feel a little bit more, you know, coronate, like, well, several warlord clans, like Clan Moors. Obviously, Pestilence is a little bit more Nurgle flavored, etc., etc., etc. And the under Altdorf one is the closest you'd probably get to the Decadent. There we go, that's the word I was looking for. Slaneshi. But anyway, we start the battle off by annoying the enemy as much as we can with our light cav, similar to the last fight, but knocking out a much more critical unit this time around. Without that single enemy mortar piece, the enemy has little hope of forcing us to go to them, and we have a very nice position here, a hill. This lake is impassable terrain, so the enemy will actually have to go around it to get to us with their main force. Now that the work of the mounted yeomen and the pistoliers is done, can't wait to get Outriders, which we should actually do pretty darn soon. They're not super expensive. Neither are war wagons, which is one of my favorite units in the Imperial roster. Yeah, we should be able to get them very quick. They're not crazy expensive, about 200 apiece, I believe. And they're very early in the tree. And we'll be making plenty of good use of them in the early game, and for those that watched or continue, hopefully, watching my frankly epic Thorgrim campaign, which is taken the spot as the best campaign on the channel, so if you haven't watched it, I do highly recommend it. It's pretty fantastic all the way around, with so much variety to it all the way to the end. But anyway, for those that really enjoyed the caravan formation that we did with Joseph Bugman, we're definitely going to do the same thing. Probably a couple of different caravan armies, maybe several different caravan armies in this campaign, since we don't need to rely on outposts to acquire those war wagons. And then since things like land ships and free company, steam tanks, there's things in the Empire roster that would fit nicely with it. Oh, and I believe the Wissenland unit of... not unit of renown, but the Elector Count State Troop from Wissenland, unless I'm mistaken, is another type of war wagon. Grenade launcher war wagon, so we have even more options for caravans if we should desire it. But anyway, in the meantime, we got a battle to fight, and it should be a fairly decent one. Our crossbows are trying to focus down the enemy crossbows, and a little bit of a range shootout, as we need the enemy to not be able to do too much missile damage. The enemy Lord, the Arch-Lector, and an Empire Captain have both closed, going after our own Lord, but I don't think he can handle two of them. Frankly, I'm not so sure that he can handle one of them, so we do have to be careful here. Stop kicking, use your weapons. There you go. Okay, fine. Okay, first you kick, then you backhand with a pistol. Use the sword. The guy's hitting you with 2 warhammers, man. You can do better. And, well, actually, he's... inspired by ability, winded, and doesn't say unit winning or losing slightly, but we do have to watch out for the enemy Empire Captain and joining the fray. Otherwise, we are doing fairly well over in the background, as our units of Wardens of the West and the 2 units of Pistoliers have destroyed now 2 units of crossbows. Funnily enough, the Wardens of the West seem too weak to actually fight the crossbows directly, because they charged on in and then took all this damage fighting crossbows in melee. Surprising, because the Pistoliers are perfectly capable of taking a unit of crossbows in melee, so interesting to see. But nonetheless, we should have them continuing to wipe out and then run down all those units. Over on our right flank, the enemy only closed with 2 units, and thus we sent a free company militia to run down and kill off an enemy unit of crossbows, and then a couple of units of melee to block that portion of the battlefield off. That said, we have started to take severe damage on one of our units of swordsmen, the one that took the brunt of the enemy damage, but while they're distracting the enemy, it's allowed some of our other units of free company to move around and get into better positions themselves. Firing into the flanks of these guys, it looks like the enemy is wise to us and is going to charge them with the swords, but that's alright. Free Company is a unit that can fire while moving and can kite if they don't take a stupid formation as they try to move away. And there we go. They'll back off and continue firing into those swords, and we can reposition our crossbows to firing into those swords as well, who have no hope of actually chasing down the Free Company. And if they want to attack these pikes, I'm perfectly happy to let them do so, as it'll allow both the Free Company and the crossbows to fire into their backs. They're certainly out of position there. And then our other unit of Free Company is doing a little bit of chasing. Another really good aspect of the, really useful aspect of the Free Company. Out here, Pistoliers have engaged in melee once more with some of the enemy crossbows. Pistoliers being nobles' sons that are essentially practicing in order to join the knightly order, but are still untrained and thus too weak to really fight in melee, which makes sense as to why they can use pistols. Besides, pistols and horses and equipment like this are all fairly expensive, which makes sense as to why they're better outfitted, despite being a light troop, than regular Imperial state troops. Anyway, the balance power is at about 80%, maybe closing in on 85% in our favor. Several of our melee units are severely badly damaged, those pikes down to something like 15% of their HP. That said, the enemy is not carrying the day here. Our range units are mostly all still fine and still fighting. The enemy Lord and Empire Captain remains surrounded by pikes, and most of the enemy melee units are starting to break. In fact, other than the Lord and the Hero, the only units still on field, oh, there we go, the crossbows will melt away, and it looks like as soon as the crossbows break, the enemy Lord and the enemy Empire Captain both shatter as well, and the battle will be ours. I gotta try to get a tier 3 barracks up and running as fast as possible. We'll really need to get a Empire Captain up and running and send them down to find Volkmar the Grim. In my previous campaign, I don't remember... I think in several campaigns, Volkmar has unfortunately been wiped out, and he is a very, very long way to travel to. Plus, there's a Cathayan faction down there, and Cathayan units work very nicely with Imperial units, so we gotta get friendly with them too. Anything for those war drums, but anyway. With that, the battle's hour is going to chase down and destroy every single bloody troop we can, though I think one managed to escape. Let's find out. Alright, very nice. Couldn't quite manage to catch the last unit, but it should be okay. We can... I mean, we could heal up. It's only 300. Then again, that's an extra turn. We could stave off bankruptcy. Damn you, Confederation Depot. But anyway, pardon the captives, I guess. Sacking settlements or leadership looters, our armies consist of noble state troops, and yet they act like a horde of free company. They loot and pillage across the countryside. Something must be done. Punish them. War fervor, leadership, we probably need the leadership more than the sacking, because we're not really sacking anything right now, so punish them it is. Army must behave and uphold the tenets of Sigmar, or else we are no better than the Northmen. The soldiers will be punished. Alrighty, and there we go. What do we have here? And if you were wondering why I didn't do the plus 1,000 prestige cost to aid an ally, this is why. We needed to save up for our first sort of Elector dilemma. Let's give this a read. In the Empire, political power is often connected to economic prosperity. While the Nuln wins, or Wissenland wins, but anyway, there is perhaps no group or organization that has a greater effect on economic prosperity across state borders than the Merchants Guild. The rumors being that many of the electors themselves are on their payroll. Using your gravitas, it may be possible for you to arrange favors for the patrons of the Merchant Guild, such as loosened regulations or tax cuts, in addition to more personal furtherances, in return for their help in advancing your political standing, all at considerable cost, of course. Fealty of all Elector Count factions +1, prestige -1,000. The merchants hold a lot of clandestine political power. Granting them favors will benefit you greatly. Alright. Ready for duty, and there we go. Now, let's just take a quick look here. Yeah, Middenland rather, is in complete shambles already. Well, they still have plenty of territory, but we're gonna need to help them out, aren't we? I guess as soon as we get another 1,000 prestige, we'll need to send help. Helmut Feuerbach, we are at 9 out of 10 on Confederation on Telebeckland, though funnily enough, right now it might be actually disadvantageous to confederate while that public order horrificness is going, and while we can't make any money, because we'll need more armies, I guess. Oh, it did that thing! Oh, game, how dare you! So it punted us out of the besiegement, and then it immediately rebuilt the Lord and the entirety of the garrison to 100%. It's a really annoying bug, and it really shouldn't be capable of doing that. And on top of that, we're damaged. I didn't heal because I didn't anticipate the this particular bug. Well, what can you do? 'Tis quite the annoyance, but little we can do about it. Let's put a point in Emperor's Finest then. We're gonna need all the help for the basic Imperial troops that we have here that we can get, since the game decided to be rude. Oh well. Karl, you are gonna have to move, though March Stance is going to make it so that you're going to cost us more money per turn. But there ain't too much we could do about it until the Confederation is gone. And Dolph, you can keep following. Although, funnily enough, you being a ballistics expert, you're probably better off commanding these forces than the other guys, so maybe you follow this guy and we'll keep an eye on the next engineer. I like that methodical one. We still have that, no, there's a lot of good options, basically. I'm just taking another quick look, and yeah, we could get the Esteemed Guide rank 6 rather than bothering with this guy, but then we could get this guy for free and then send him somewhere if we need to. Anyway, nothing to build because we can't afford anything. We're at +1 now, 550. You know what? I think it's time to switch, at least briefly, to Host Festag. And the next turn we'll start collecting the money because we need to counteract the negative public order or the negative money in the early game. Tom, you absolutely need to build that tap room, but we cannot yet afford it. And until we do... Hey, some Slaneshi corruption. Cute. Until we can afford it... we're -10, eh? Yeah, but we'll need to reduce the cost of it. Alright, fine. I guess it's only 200, but it's still a fair bit. Oh, and these guys are no longer willing to peace out. Most likely they have a new full stack up and running. This I admit, this really irritant. But anyway. And I can't believe they got the new Lord back, too. And we went out of our way to chase everything down. Well, nearly everything. That's how they get you. Oh, well. I don't think we're going to bother with either of these. Probably should have saved the first 500 rather for, you know... giving aid rather than giving Karl XP, but that's alright. Let's skip, let's end the turn, let's fight these guys again while we've taken half of the HP and damage. Alright, here we go again. Since this faction has clearly found an infinite troop hack, since their garrison is at full HP in one turn, I guess we gotta wipe them out a second time. Go. Alrighty, here we go. Darn those infinite troop hacks. It is not looking so great for us, especially considering we took about 1/5 of our army in damaged last fight against almost the same army, with the exception that last battle the enemy's army was damaged going into it, and now it's the same army but with a couple of extra troops on top of that, while our entire melee line is, if not quite useless, extremely badly beat up. And the bounce power starts off definitely in the enemy's favor, and we're definitely going to have to be careful here to pull off a win. Anyway, we are still on the same map, which makes sense because we're fighting in the same exact place, and still around this lake, which is a fairly big advantage. We gotta keep control of this hill as it dominates this portion of the battlefield. Of course, similar to previous battle, we do have to get around with our cavalry and charge those mortars before they're able to wipe out too many of our critical crossbows, as we need them to dish out the damage. The Free Company are also still in pretty darn good shape from the last battle. They may not be as tanky or as capable in melee as the regular state troops, but they can fire away at the enemy and then move to melee should our very limited melee lines fail. Anyway, similar to last time, our 100 speed, super fast moving light cav make their way towards the enemy artillery crew within the center of the enemy army, who tried to shadow our movements. But unfortunately, we're simply not able to catch up to them. One unit of pistoliers charges into the mortars, and the second one charges the crossbows and pikes, and then we'll immediately move on. Now, just want to take a little bit of advantage of the charge and the mass. and then allow the units of mounted yeomen to close the distance afterwards with the mortars, which are going to rout. There we go. We've taken position up on the hill, and we have elevation advantage with our crossbows, which is very much needed, and they're going to do their best to focus down enemy units as they move on in. With, of course, support from the Free Company Militia as the sort of second line after the shielded, primarily, first line. And then, hopefully, once they run out of ammunition, by then we will be able to move them in. Anyway, big old blob of enemy melee troops. We're going to move in our severely damaged swords and pikes as well, but essentially we're keeping the swords and pikes together, such that the hurt units can sort of intersperse themselves amongst each other's troops, and once again, similar to what we did with Karl in one of the sieges, distribute the damage equally, and thus hopefully the units don't die. Anyway, we're still holding the enemy back quite well. This is also impassable terrain, by the way, just like the lake is, if you're wondering why the enemy is not moving out there. All the while, of course, our units of cavalry continue to harass the enemy, essentially riding around the enemy pikes and whatever other melee troops there are, and just smashing into the enemy range lines over and over again. Our Free Company Militia, as typical, have moved to the side, to the flanks and rear of a couple of the enemy troops here, who are being held up by some of our pikes and are going to do a good job firing into their backs. And then, as needed, they can charge on into melee as well. And there we go. Gotta love Free Company. Although, of course, the Free Company will probably be forced into melee, because these pikes are not going to be able to hold for too long. Another unit of crossbows gets caught, another unit of crossbows gets shattered, and we get another charge into a third unit of crossbows, and then continue backing off, taking pot shots with our pistols as we go. Speaking of pistols, the Free Company give chase to another unit of crossbows, which got obliterated by our own ranged units. And now we'll just make sure that we chase them down. The big thing about this particular battle is not that just we have to win, but we have to make sure that every single unit dies. We can't allow a single unit to survive, and that means while this unit, for example, and a couple of the other units would be better off contributing to the fight, in fact, even the Pistoliers would probably be better moving here and making sure that these guys are wiped out, we need to make sure that they're all chasing stuff. And the closer an enemy routes to the edge of the map, the more dangerous it is that another unit will survive, so we do have to watch out for it. Anyway, our pikemen over on our left flank have unfortunately broken, which has allowed an enemy unit of pikes to close the distance and smash into the rear line of one of our crossbows. But our Free Company Militia were cognizant of that, and will give chase to one now destroyed unit of swords, while the other unit of Free Company will move to hopefully deal with these pikes. Though perhaps it won't even be all that necessary, as we've reoriented our crossbows and are now firing into the flanks of the pikemen. Between their low armor and their lack of shields, and I guess the fact that we're firing into their flanks and rear, they shouldn't be able to menace our crossbows for too long. There we go. The pikes will rout, and our crossbows return to firing upon the enemy crossbows instead. Bounce power has shifted to about 80%, maybe 75% in our favor at this point. Our melee line that has held back the main enemy melee troops is in severe damage now. In fact, and considering the pikemen that broke over on the left flank, we have basically no regular melee troops left. And we're going to reposition some of our Free Company Militia to be able to plug the gap here as needed. Of course, the big problem is also the fact that the enemy has two heroes here, an Empire Captain and a Lord, an Arch-Elector presumably. And we don't have an easy way of bringing them down, though our own General of the Empire, while damaged, has been taking pot shots with his pistol at this Arch-Elector while he's busy fighting these swords. That said, the battle's power still remains at about 75% in our favor, and we are still chasing enemy troops down, but so far not a one has escaped off the battlefield, including that artillery crew. Gonna make sure that this crossbow unit is routed, and then we're gonna charge another one with our mounted yeomen. Alrighty, and it looks like the Arch-Elector will move away from from our own formation, which is actually good for us, as between the Pistoliers, which have arrived to help here, as we need that little bit of extra armor-piercing missile damage, will help gun the enemy Arch-Elector down. But it does feel pretty weird to have Sigmarite priests be part of the part of the Empire Secessionists, admittedly. Anyway, as soon as the enemy priest is cut down or gunned down, the entire enemy army will shatter, and the battle will be ours. Again, a very close one. Several of our melee troops barely held on, and I guess we're going to have to wait and see if they all survive. Otherwise, it's a matter of trying to make sure that every single unit here is destroyed so that we can instantly capture the enemy settlement rather than having to deal with hacks. Alrighty, there we go. Took a lot of damage, especially to our melee line, but it was necessary as it freed up all of our other units to do the work. The work being making sure that every single enemy unit dies instead of having to deal with infinite troop hacks again. Fortunately, with them all dead, we immediately get to capture the place. Alright, there we go. Only one more turn of that disgusting Confederation debuff Berserker Sword. Should probably go to Karl, to be perfectly honest, since he... Oh, actually, no, he starts with Dragon Tooth. I forgot about that. I mostly forgot about it because we can get Beast Slayer and Galmaraz, and it's always been such a weird dynamic for Karl, where he has, like, all the options of the purple weapons. I wonder, are you able to now lend those weapons? Oh, you are. All right. Well, wait, maybe Dragon Tooth was always lendable? I don't remember. Well, either way, it's good that we can give it to somebody else. Now, Karl, you're still fairly damaged, and we still have to be careful, but we can proceed to Erlach, see about those orcs. And they are certainly rebuilding. It's a tier 2, but it shouldn't be all that concerning. One more turn of healing, and at the very least with the Imperial Foot and the Reiksguard at full HP, Karl should be okay. Rank 12 is what we're saving up for, and I guess that shouldn't change. Though Karl will always have some Reiksguard in his army, Speed of Horse is kind of terrible compared to Emperor's Finest or Pistol Corps. I think it's by far the worst one. Yeah, I know, it's an extra charge bonus and speed, but, well... Our Reiksguard already have pretty fantastic charge. Anyway, Dolph Hertwigens, you are going to continue moving on towards these guys. I do have to wonder whether the Paravon Bretonians are going to declare war on us. They really don't like us for killing off the Empire Secessionists. I personally don't really see how they had a... I know it's a phrase here. I don't know. They don't have a dog in the fight? Is that the... You know, why would they care, is what I'm saying. But anyway, orchards, rather, are pretty cheap, and it's a little bit of extra public order. We need more public order here, but that's not happening now. You have switched. We're on -3, but we need to start collecting money, and I think we're going to do so now. Weaving House costs 1,000, so I think we can't afford it, but at least we're positive. Tom, we need to save up 1,800, was it, to get the tap room and build it here? And that hasn't changed either. So I guess we have to wait, and then the same thing for Eilhart, and I guess the same thing's going to be true of Ubersreich. We will delete the building here, and we will not collect the income. And decent likelihood that the Skaven there declare war on us too, but otherwise, at least we're positive income, and we're about to be relatively okay in terms of control, as soon as, well, depending on if we immediately confederate somebody. Now, Middenland, y'all need help now. We're going to go Electoral Machinations, we're going to go Send Aid, and we will target Middenland for it. Target at target region. So I guess... I assume the Kazrak is here, so we'll spawn you at Middenheim, I guess. Yeah, I guess. Go for it. Oh, I thought it would be a better army than that. Kazrak's gonna instantly kill you. Well, nonetheless, they need all the help they can get, so... it's better than nothing, I guess. Yeah, alright, I guess we're ready to end the turn, so skip. Alright, the Countess denies us. Diplomatic relations -20 with Wissenland and Nal. Alright, so I guess they didn't appreciate that peace with the Court of Night after all. But hey, we've got non-aggression pact with Vlad, so what can you do? Countess Emanuel von Leibwitz is a shrewd political player. She has made it known that while not personal, she does not support your cause. Nal and Wissenland will remain hostile to you for the foreseeable future. Fortunately, this happened after the Confederation debuff went away, which would have been a pretty nasty combination. Anyway, let them keep dealing with the Court of Night there. We're not going to interfere with it. We will need to probably consolidate some stuff and maybe reduce our troop count for a little bit, though it would be nice to knock out these Skaven. I think we can't do it with one army because we don't know where their main stack is, and thus they could potentially attack us. If we go here, they'll just go like this. Granted, they can't take South Bank, but the other places are kind of undefended effectively. And yeah, anyway, folks, with that, I think I'm going to call this first episode here. And, oh, we can start next episode off by attacking, or besieging rather, Urlach, and allowing them to probably sally out and attack Karl in the field so that we can take advantage of the field fight. Anyway, the episode's going along as they tend to do. It's always very hard to predict the episode length in Old World because I have to do a lot of editing, both for the cinematic battles and for the end term, so it's always like plus minus half hour, depending, for me anyway, trying to keep track of the length. Anyway, I'm gonna call it here. Next time we're going to probably try and consolidate a little bit, maybe build a second army that we can send out to help Middenland in general, since we are immune to trespassing especially, but generally speaking we want a Reikland at least to be built strong, and we need to start actually making money, so that's going to be a decent little bit of effort, while we also wipe out the orcs here, and hopefully this area will, for the foreseeable future, at least until more orcs like the Broken Axe come south, will be safe. We shall see. Lots more fun to be had. Can't wait for those Elector count troops and other things. Once again, that's a lot of different types of troops that we can put into our armies. It's going to be an interesting one, folks, so stay tuned for more. Don't forget to leave those likes and comments below. All glory to the algorithm. And thanks for watching.